It was early morning on July 16, 1945. At the Alamogordo Proving Grounds near White Sands, New Mexico, a select group of atomic scientists and U.S. military personnel had gathered. On a tower in the distance was a secret, untested nuclear device codenamed Trinity. The countdown began, and then the button was pushed. In a flash of light, the nuclear age came bursting on the scene. America had won the race to unleash the destructive power of the atom. It was clear this power was awesome, too awesome to remain untamed. So began the quest of science to harness that power for peace, while others feared it would lead to another war more destructive than any since the beginning of time. The beginning of time. The beginning of time for man? The beginning of time for the universe? How did it all begin? What keeps the awesome power of the atom in check until it bursts forth in those uncontrolled nuclear reactions? Scientists have deciphered the laws that govern them, but who made the laws? Who made the atoms? And who made the earth, sun, moon, and stars? Hi, I'm Don McIntosh, and in this program, we'll be exploring the scientific mysteries of the universe and the controversy over how it came to be. But first, on Christmas Eve in 1968, the Apollo 8 astronauts Anders, Lovell, and Borman gave an impressive answer to the question of who made the heavens and the earth when they relayed a special message back to Earth from their orbit around the moon.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
The world was stunned. Like a voice from the heavens, it was reminded of the Creator's claim in Genesis that he had done it all in 6 days. But most modern scientists long ago rejected the 6 literal days of creation in favor of Big Bang's theory of geologic and cosmic evolution over 6 long geologic and cosmic periods. They claim it's one of science's greatest achievements of all time. But 2 U.S. scientists, Dr. Robert Gentry and his son and associate Dr. David Gentry, now prepare to show why it's actually scientists' greatest blunder, not its greatest achievement. In particular, instead of the universe being the same everywhere, which is Big Bang's key assumption, they have discovered astronomical proof the universe has a nearby center. They believe this startling discovery may yet attract the interest of people of all religious persuasions, and even those who have none, for they believe it points to the great white throne, the celestial dwelling place of the God of Genesis, the same God who gave the literal 7-day creation commandment to Moses on Mount Sinai. With this background, Drs. Robert and David Gentry began to unfold the exciting saga behind their discoveries.
The excitement really begins by recognizing that the Hubble Space Telescope and other NASA telescopes have photographed some truly amazing celestial objects within our universe. This is a very long exposure of our galaxy as seen in the night sky. We see it here from inside, looking edge-on through its disk. of billions of stars interlaced with vast clouds of dust and gas, hundreds of thousands of light years in size. And this is a supernova, exhibiting what astronomers have called the glowing eye. Then we have NGC 49's cosmic blast. And then the Ant, a planetary nebula surrounding the dying sun-like star Menzel 3. Another exploding star caused the Eskimo Nebula. It's about 5,000 light years from Earth in the constellation Gemini. A complex of mixed nebulosity surrounding the triple star Rho Ophiuchus and the yellow giant Antares. And here's the amazing NGC 346 in the Small Magellanic Cloud. Another exploding star, 3,000 light years away in the constellation Draco, created the Cat's Eye Nebula. B838 Monocerotis is from a burst of light traveling outward and illuminating shells of gas and dust ejected from the central star and has been likened to Van Gogh's Starry Night. And here are the fabulously exotic pillars of creation in the Eagle Nebula. They're actually spires of rarefied gas and dust hundreds of light years long. And here's a close-up of the beautiful Orion Nebula that we'll see more of later on. These two closely spaced galaxies, nicknamed the Mice, are 300 million light years away in the constellation Coma Berenices. The variety of shapes and the sizes of galaxies is unbelievable. Take, for example, the barred spiral NGC 1300. And then the starburst galaxy. Here we have Hoag's Object Strange Ring Galaxy. And here is the Antenna Galaxy, showing the interaction of two spiral galaxies. Galaxies are so huge, and their distances so great, that we can hardly comprehend their existence. The beauty and majesty of all these celestial wonders captures the imagination. Take a look at the exquisite detail of these astronomically huge lanes of gas and dust that form a belt around the Sombrero Galaxy. Surely all these galaxies are telling us something of vast importance.
To see what it is, we turn to this special Hubble Space Telescope photo that took 11 days or 1 million seconds to expose in 2003 as the telescope orbited the Earth. It shows several thousand galaxies in a little speck of space the size of a pinhead. It's aptly named the Hubble Ultra Deep Field because it recorded galaxies more distant than any ever seen before and leads to the estimate that throughout the cosmos there are over several 100 billion galaxies, each with over 100 billion stars. Many small green circles have now been drawn on this image, each one containing the most distant galaxies ever seen. But when magnified, we see that all of them are red. Why? We'll focus on this shortly. For now, we note these distant galaxies must reach almost to the edge of the visible universe. And because we see about the same density of galaxies in every direction the telescope is pointed, we say this is evidence that our universe does have a center, which is astronomically nearby. But this is just the opposite of what Hubble and other astronomers concluded when interpreting his famous redshift discovery. So which is correct? To find the answer, we flash back in time to the early part of the 20th century. By then, astronomers like Edwin Hubble knew that the Doppler effect could cause spectral line shifts due to the relative motion of the source and observer. A shift toward the blue end of the light spectrum, called a blue shift, was interpreted as motion toward the Earth, and a shift toward the red end, called a red shift, was interpreted as motion away from the Earth. Here's a real astronomical illustration of the Doppler effect. The gases swirling around a distant galactic disk that are moving toward Earth produce a blue shift. Those moving away produce a red shift. It was at Mount Wilson Observatory in the 1920s that Hubble utilized its new 100-inch reflector, the largest telescope of that day, to discover that light arriving from distant galaxies was redshifted in an orderly way. In 1929, he published his findings. The greater the redshift, the greater the distance a galaxy was from the Earth. This was a monumental discovery, as shown in this graphic. that modern astronomy has confirmed. It was also very puzzling. Hubble and other astronomers had observed redshifts of different galaxies but didn't recognize the systematic trends. Previously, the universe was thought to be static and unchanging. Now it was shown to have an unexpected kind of order. This animation illustrates how the redshift increases as a galaxy moves further and further from the Earth. The preeminent question was, and still is, what assumption should be used to interpret Hubble's discovery? Before discussing Hubble's assumptions and the conclusions he drew, we first determine the outcome if the Doppler interpretation is used. In that case, these graphics clearly show that galaxies both far and near are receding from us, spreading out from us, if you please, in an orderly manner. The spherical symmetry of the galactic recession from our observation point is again extraordinary evidence of the existence of a nearby center of the universe. Why then didn't Hubble report this discovery over 75 years ago? The answer is in his 1937 book, The Observational Approach to Cosmology. On page 51, he stated, "The unwelcome supposition of a favored location must be avoided at all costs." On page 59, he spoke of ways to escape the horror of a unique position, which was also said to be intolerable. And on page 54, he emphasized, there must be no favored location in the universe, no center, no boundary. All must see the universe alike.
It's really obvious, then, that Hubble engaged himself in the most extraordinary denial of fact in all the history of science in his attempt to get rid of the center and demand the universe be everywhere the same. These three graphics show, however, this could not be accomplished using the Doppler assumption. If, for example, observer number 1 sees redshifts of galaxies moving away from his position, and a distant observer number 2 sees redshifts of galaxies moving away from his position, then each will observe a universe full of blue-shifted galaxies mixed in uniformly with red-shifted galaxies. But this is not observed. So it's impossible to get rid of the center using the Doppler interpretation of Hubble's redshift discovery. So, how did Hubble and all astronomers since then evade it? This they did by adopting a new untested assumption about redshift called space-time expansion. As this illustration shows, space-time expansion assumedly causes light to be redshifted as it travels across the universe, independent of the Doppler effect. It was postulated to cause galaxies to move apart and wavelengths of light to expand as space itself expanded. This idea was adopted over 70 years ago, but remained untested until David and I did so and found proof it has always been wrong.
The reason? Light wavelength expansion means the loss of energy. The total non-conservation of energy loss of all the light particles in the universe due to this imaginary process equals over 30 million times the mass of the universe. Details of this are available on the Internet report Archive GRQC 9806061 at orionfdn.org.
Galaxy motion is also assumed to be magically affected somehow, causing each galaxy to move away from every other galaxy as space itself expands, and in this way make it appear the universe is everywhere the same. But it's easy to show it's the greatest scientific blunder of all time. All we have to do is examine what three of the greatest authorities on the Big Bang say when trying to convince their physics graduate students that it is genuine. Of all the disturbing implications of the expansion of the universe, none is more upsetting to many a student on first encounter than the nonsense of this idea. The universe expands, the distance between one cluster of galaxies and another cluster expands, the distance between Sun and Earth expands, the length of a meter stick expands, the atom expands. Then how can it make any sense to speak of any expansion at all? Expansion relative to what? Expansion relative to nonsense. Only later does he realize that the atom does not expand, the meter stick does not expand. The distance between Sun and Earth does not expand. Only distances between clusters of galaxies and greater distances are subject to the expansion. Only at this gigantic scale of averaging does the notion of homogeneity make sense. Not so at smaller distances. No model more quickly illustrates the actual situation than a rubber balloon with pennies affixed to it, each by a drop of glue. As the balloon is inflated, the pennies increase their separation one from another, but not a single one of them expands. From the book Gravitation by C.W. Misner, Kip Thorne, and J.A. Wheeler, published by W.H. Freeman and Company, 1973, page 719, and section 27.5. Here is the balloon doublespeak illustration that Misner, Thorne, and Wheeler's book uses to intimidate their graduate students to accept expansion. But the simple example of galaxies projected on screens at increasing distances from a projector reveals the fatal flaw in their illustration. They show that expansion, if it ever existed, would cause galaxies to expand in size as well as separate from each other. Here is another illustration proving the same point. Namely, if expansion had ever existed, galaxies would have expanded into smithereens. Obviously, no galaxies would ever have formed in the first place.
But as we saw earlier, the universe is full of them, more than 1,000 billion trillion, each one silently testifying that the space-time expansion hypothesis has always been an imaginary effect, and hence that Big Bang has always been nothing more than a big fizzle, just the figment of the imagination of those who vainly tried to wipe the remembrance of God from His universe. While the Big Bang collapses under its own contradictions, we now begin to understand the true significance of Hubble's discovery. There really is a nearby center of the universe. And this cosmic center of the universe illustration shows how galaxies diminish in size and increase in redshift as they move further from the center. So what is the significance of the center? What does it all mean? In Isaiah 40, verse 21, the Bible speaks of God spreading out the heavens, an obvious reference to the expansion of the universe we've been discussing. Also obvious is that their outward motion, their spreading out, implies there is a point of origin, a definite location from which they are spreading out from. Which point could that be?
In Psalm 103:19, the Bible says, "Thy throne, O Lord, is established in the heavens," which we also identify with the location of the great white throne described in Revelation 20, verse 11. It's just that simple. In fact, this graphic briefly illustrates the new cosmic model. It contrasts visible galaxies receding from the nearby center with our recently discovered outer shell of galaxies that encloses the visible universe. Light from the outer galaxies cannot be seen by telescopes because vacuum gravity has shifted it down to become the well-known cosmic microwave radiation. My December 2004 article in Perspectives in Science and Christian Faith identifies the galaxies in the visible universe as originating in the Genesis creation, while those in the outer shell are ascribed to a separate, earlier creation. This fits with Job 38:7, which shows that intelligent beings existed prior to the Genesis creation. With this background, we will now see why the nearby throne has special relevance to the Genesis six-day creation. To us, the logical conclusion is that God deliberately created the universe so as to reveal that His throne, the great command center of the universe, is located so astronomically nearby that it could be within our own Milky Way galaxy. On this basis, we here on planet Earth are definitely in a privileged position in the universe. It is reasonable that Earth should occupy a special place in the cosmos because the Creator Himself lived here for over 30 years. We thus believe God is now using the heavens to confront humanity with astronomical proof that He is the Creator of the heavens and the earth. Moreover, this view exactly fits with our earlier scientific discoveries of Earth's rapid creation and young age, as shown in our earlier videos titled Fingerprints of Creation and the Young Age of the Earth, and my book, Creation's Tiny Mystery. More information on these resources is available at halos.com and orionfdn.org. The scientific community was informed of the downfall of the Big Bang, the discovery of the center of the universe, and its identification with the Great White Throne, plus many other features of the universe in this poster we presented at the April 2005 American Physical Society meeting in Tampa.
We have already discussed the meaning of a number of its graphics. It can be viewed in its entirety at this APS website.
Along with this, it's fascinating to think about what we would find if we were to travel to the throne itself. So let's take a trip there right now through the magic of computer animation. And as we prepare to leave Earth's orbit, we see the night sky coming into view with its millions of city lights far below. The sun blazes into view along with the constellation of Orion, and we begin to accelerate, passing our sun at 10 times the speed of light. Years ago, I suggested in a scientific publication that the Orion Nebula was the space corridor to the throne, and now as we approach the stars making up the constellation, each one a different distance from Earth, we're going over 1 million times the speed of light. As the stars of Orion pass behind us, the Orion Nebula, 1,500 light years away from Earth, looms larger and larger as we begin our deceleration. This nebula is a vast cloud of rarefied gases and dust 100 light years across. It is illuminated and being boiled away by this handful of very bright and very hot blue-white giant stars called the trapezium. Hundreds of smaller sun-like stars form a cluster around them. As we pass through the cloud and emerge on the other side, we see heaven itself and the throne of God described in Revelation 21:16 as being a glorious city, 350 miles square. Verses 19 and 20 tell us its foundation is made of 12 layers of precious gemstones and surrounded by a 250-foot high wall containing 12 gates, 3 on each side. As we enter through one of the huge pearl gates described in verse 21, we see within the city, on top of its huge mountain, spoken of in Isaiah 14:13 and Revelation 14:1, the indescribably glorious and holy throne room of God pictured in Revelation 4. We reverently enter and approach closer to His throne, and there before us, according to Hebrews 8:1 through 6 and Revelation 11:19, is the same fourth commandment of the 10 given to Moses on Mount Sinai, which tells us of God creating the visible universe in 6 days and resting on the seventh-day Sabbath. Jesus tells us in Matthew 5:18 that it has never been changed and that He is there now, representing us before God. The fact that God created the universe to specially point to His throne and His seventh-day creation commandment tells us it is just as valid now as when given in Eden.
It will be of spectacular importance as the end-time events continue to unfold before us. How could it be otherwise when we see the first angel of the 3 in Revelation 14 commanding with a loud voice in verses 6 and 7, "For everyone to worship Him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters."
We believe the timing of this discovery, that the universe really does have a nearby center, may mean God arranged all this to come to world attention before the greatest and most spectacular event of all time,
the second coming of Christ in the clouds of heaven. As you can see, He is at the throne, ministering as our great high priest as described in the book of Hebrews. But very soon He will return. Retracing our steps now, Jesus comes out of the most holy place of the heavenly sanctuary on his way back to the earth. The angels surround him, forming a vast cloud like the one described in Acts 1 verse 9 that the disciples saw when Jesus was taken back to his throne at his ascension from earth 2,000 years ago. And just like Revelation 1 verse 7 says, as he enters the solar system, every person on earth will be able to see him approach, at first like a dark storm cloud, growing larger and brighter, until, according to Revelation 6 verse 14, the atmosphere rips apart, and suddenly, there he is. His brightness, like pure energy, consumes all who turned against him and rebelled. Yet we who are waiting for him will he save from that destruction. That's what it's all about. The Lord is trying to help us prepare for this great and glorious event.
Lastly, believing as we do that God intends to use the great works of creation presented in this program, as well as the saga behind these discoveries, to awaken a great many to a sure realization that Christ's second coming is imminent, we urge one and all to join us in a worldwide effort to spread this good news so that it will go as fire in the stubble. Thank you for watching, and may the God of creation bless you. To order this video, call 1-800-467-6380 or visit our website, halos.com.